All right. Good evening, everyone. So good to be with you again today. I'm so grateful you're here. And for those of you that are watching the replay, thank you very much. I know that you're going to benefit from this. I can't wait to teach on this topic of triggers and what they are and how they show up in life and how you can manage them better. You know, the latest federal data shows that young people, young adults, they're more likely than older adults to be experiencing symptoms of anxiety and depression. Almost 50% of Americans, of young American adults, are struggling with symptoms of anxiety and depression. And those are sure signs that they're being triggered by something in their environment, and it's keeping them in that state. And that impacts their performance in school and at work. It absolutely impacts the quality of their relationships. And over time, if they don't learn how to manage it and level up their life through either good healthcare practices or personal development practices, then it will start to take a toll on their mental and physical and spiritual well-being over time. You know, the Surgeon General has reported that anxiety and depression are at epidemic levels in the United States. And I personally believe trauma is too. All you have to do is watch the news and listen to the latest news about mass shootings to really question whether how deep trauma has permeated into our society. And what I want you to take away from that is everyone gets triggered in life. Everyone, you and me, your family members, your colleagues at work, your boss, your friends, everyone gets triggered. Some people get triggered more than others. And sometimes we're aware of it and sometimes we aren't. If you don't know how to respond to your triggers, that's when you get stuck in a pattern that defeats yourself over a period of time. Reacting to triggers can really, really damage our relationships, our career growth, and our health and well-being. But, you know, very few people know how to control their triggers. And so in this video, that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show you how you can turn your trigger reactions into trigger responses. So let's start by just talking about what triggers are, because we've heard that word. It's overused in our society to some degree, but I want to just set the left and right boundaries here and talk about what triggers are from a physiological point of view and how that impacts the quality of your life. Your triggers come from unhealed wounds. All unhealed wounds imprint onto your nervous system, and they show up in ways later on in your life that are unhelpful. So what do I mean by that? Unhealed wounds are either physical, emotional, or social. Maybe you were bullied as a child in school. Maybe you came from a dysfunctional household, or you might have suffered some abuse or neglect in your life. Whatever happens to us emotionally manifests physically, and vice versa. And that diminishes your spirit over time, and it leads to isolation. It leads to those higher levels of anxiety and depression that we're seeing all across America, especially in the younger adult population. I personally believe social media, a dependency on social media and scrolling contributes to that, but that is a topic for a different day. I'm going to stay on triggers and what you can do about them to control them and manage them and improve the quality of your life as you do that. But as your triggers come from unhealed wounds, as they diminish your spirit, when this happens, you're out of balance with yourself. So this is all about regaining that balance. And because I don't want you to suffer in your relationships and your career and your well-being. So from a physiological standpoint, the takeaway for you here is that triggers are just your body's way of talking to you. They're trying to get your attention. I'm wounded and I need your help. I need your help healing. And if you can learn to speak the language of your body, you'll start to recognize when you're triggered and be able to start taking the steps that I'm going to show you here, building the skills that I'm going to show you here today in managing those triggers. You know, Your body tells you when it's physically sick. And the triggers that you notice when that happens is fever, nausea, maybe you've got a headache, maybe you start to sweat and you feel weaker in your body. Your body also tells you when you're wounded in other ways, through anxiety, through depression. It might show up as irritability. If you know anyone that's easily startled, maybe you're easily startled. That's something that I struggle with. Those are signs of unhealed wounds that are inside of us that, depending on how we're living our life and the situations that we find ourselves in, we can easily put ourselves in a situation that we get triggered. A lot of people heal from those unhealed traumas. They heal on their own, and they don't ever have a problem after that. But others don't, and that is completely normal. Science has recognized that is normal. So is the medical community. Most of us normalize the wounds that we have, that we sustain, in order to just carry on in life. Maybe we have had a serious argument with our partner, or a colleague at work, or a friend. Maybe we've been cut off in traffic so many times that we just get so angry that we just suppress it. We suppress that anger, and over time, we just learn to manage it that way. And it feels like we've got things under control, but our body always keeps the score. And you will get triggered. Your body will trigger you if you're put into a situation that it recognizes as a threat, to get your attention, to do something to protect yourself. So what do you do? What do you do when you get triggered and you're in a situation, either at home or at work, or in a social setting, or just alone in your car driving in the highway, in traffic, and you get cut off, or you get jammed up in traffic and you're in a hurry to get somewhere, and you find yourself getting triggered? What are some of the things that you can do? And I want to share the number one thing that you can do starting right now today to start managing your triggers in a much, much more effective way when you feel yourself starting to get triggered. The first step is always awareness. And I haven't written that down here for you, but I will share that with you. Awareness is always the first step. Become more aware of when you're starting to get triggered. And when that happens, the number one thing to do is to slow down. Slow down. Very simple, but this is what happens when you're triggered. Your heart starts to beat faster. Your breathing becomes shallower. That's because your defenses are up. That's because your nervous system senses that something in the environment feels threatening to you. It might be a person that you're interacting with, or a situation that you're in. Somehow your nervous system senses danger, even if there isn't really truly any danger. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between real danger and imagined danger. If you're still carrying around an unhealed wound from the past, situations in your life that your nervous system, that your brain recognizes as a close enough match to that experience that you had earlier in life, your body, your brain and nervous system will respond. Take the safe route. Think of it as taking the safe route, and send up fire alarms saying there's danger in the area, there's threats. Be prepared to defend yourself. You get right into fight and flight mode. You're either prepared to fight back, or you're prepared to run from the situation. To keep from going offline and sinking into freeze and collapse, you need to slow down. Unless life and limb is threatened, if you can stay quiet and just avoid reacting at all, do that. That's really a power move. If you're in a situation that you get triggered and you can feel your rage and your anger boiling up on the inside, if you can avoid reacting in that moment, you've taken a huge, huge step forward. Recognize that. Notice your breathing as well as you're slowing down. Notice that your breathing may be very shallow in that moment as you're starting to recognize, hey, I'm getting triggered. I'm slowing down. And I want to take longer breaths. I want to take deeper breaths as I'm able to do that. So slowing down is the most important first step that you can take to starting to get control and manage your triggers. What's next? Well, the second thing I would recommend you do is to remind yourself that you are safe. 99 times out of 100, when you feel yourself getting triggered by something in your environment, something's happening, you're in a situation, or you're interacting with someone and feeling yourself getting triggered, 99 times out of 100, you're safe. You may not be enjoying that situation. It may not be a pleasant experience for you, but you are safe. Wherever you are in that moment, if you're able to scan the environment slowly with your eyes, just look around, identify 3 objects, 3 sounds, and 3 parts of your body. Notice that everything is okay as you're slowing down and scanning the environment. Remind yourself you're safe, you're okay. If you're in your car and somebody cuts you off or something happens in your car to upset you, to trigger you, safely try to do the same thing. Look at your hands on the steering wheel. Notice your breathing and try to take deeper breaths. Remind yourself, I'm in control of my vehicle. I'm safe. I'm okay. If you're in a room, at work, or at home, slowly, again, scan the environment with your eyes and notice 3 objects. Listen for 3 sounds. And just notice and touch 3 parts of your body. Remind yourself, I'm okay. Those pictures on the wall, the furniture, the floor where I'm standing. It sounds so basic, but there's a reason why you're slowing down, and there's a reason why you're reminding yourself you're safe, and that's coming up next. But I want you just to focus on slowing down, reminding yourself that you're safe. And if you see something as you're scanning the room where you're in or the place you're in and you like that, notice it. You're okay. And if there's a person there with you that is the source of why you're being triggered, then my recommendation is politely and respectfully. And this may take a lot of effort, but politely and respectfully excuse yourself and leave the room if you can. You know, if it's a spouse or a boss, or you're in a situation that you cannot leave right away, try to just take deep breaths, create space, remind yourself that you're safe. And at the first opportunity, just ask, I need a break, and remove yourself from that situation before you react. These are the 2 most important things you can do to prevent yourself from reacting to a situation. Because it's when you react that you affect the quality of your relationships, that you affect your career growth, and that you bring on health effects that you'll have to take care of later if you don't get a handle on your triggers now. So what's next? The third step, after you slow down and start scanning the environment to remind yourself that you're safe, that there is no real danger to your survival or threat to your survival. The next thing is to create a gap. You don't have to react right away to what's happening. Again, 99 times out of 100, you don't have to really react to what's going on. It's an impulse within you based on a perceived threat. But if you can slow down and scan the environment and remind yourself, I am safe, you can start to create that gap. And what do I mean by creating a gap? The famous French composer Claude Debussy had a beautiful quote, and I love it. He said, the music isn't in the notes. The music is in the gap between them. Think about that. the music that we hear isn't really the notes that are being played. It's the space, it's the silence in between those notes that make the music that we love to hear so beautiful to our senses. And doesn't that make sense? Because if those gaps weren't there, if that space and that silence wasn't there in between the notes, what would we hear? Just continuous sound that wouldn't make sense. And a lot of people don't really think about that. But the gap in between what happens in your environment and how you react or respond to it makes all the difference in the world. And this is how you use one of your superpowers. I call it self-regulation, to create that gap. When your nervous system starts to regulate itself as you slow down, start to breathe deliberately, mindfully, and remind yourself that you're safe, you're widening the gap between the time something happened that triggered you and the time you respond to it. And ways to respond to the situation when that happens, when you start to create that gap, ways to respond to the situation at hand will start to enter your awareness. And you can make good choices about how you really want to respond to the situation. It's really that simple. Slow down. Start to regulate your breathing deliberately. Take deeper breaths to start regulating your lungs and your heart. Look around your environment. Pick out something that's pleasant to your eyes and your ears. And just notice that you're safe. And as you're doing that, notice that you're creating a gap. And that gap will allow you to choose the next note you're going to play, your reaction or your response. And it's not easy to do this. It's a skill that you develop by repetition and practice. And believe me, I've had plenty of practice at this. And I continue to get better at it. And I know that it works, which is why I'm sharing this with you. But sometimes you screw up. And what happens if you do screw up? Well, my recommendation to you is the fourth thing that I want to share, and that is give yourself grace. As I said, this is a skill that takes practice and time to develop. Our tendency to react when we get triggered and then regret later on what we might have said or what we might have done in that situation happens because we judge ourselves relentlessly. We are so critical of ourselves. We're more critical of ourselves than we are to others. We are so much more open to giving others grace than allowing ourselves that same grace. But if you recognize that you do get triggered from time to time, and you want to change that behavior and start managing your triggers so that you create trigger responses instead of trigger reactions, and this is part of the process. Replace judgment with empathy. Have more empathy for yourself. Give yourself credit for recognizing, I'm going to get better at responding when I'm triggered versus reacting. Replace that self-criticism, your tendency to criticize yourself, with more self-compassion. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I may not get it perfect every time. I may not get it right every time. I still may say something that I wish I hadn't later on, but I'm going to continue to get better at it. That's giving yourself grace. This isn't easy at first, as I said, but it will get easier every time you practice it. So keep practicing on widening the gap in between the notes. And I promise you, over time, you will see improvement. You will see yourself responding to your triggers versus reacting to them. That's all that I wanted to share with you today. I hope that this has served you in some ways. I'd love your feedback. If you have any feedback to provide, to offer, to share, just throw something in the comments for me. I'd love to hear from you. And I would also love to share my program with you, my new program. I call it the Fulfillment Formula. And this is 4 steps to living a happier, more satisfied and content life with more optimism and joy, looking forward to the future. I've just developed this program. I'm putting a pilot together with some high performers, and I would love to invite you to participate in this program with me and the group. Just scan the QR code or go to my website, and I would just invite you to have a call with me where I can tell you step by step what the fulfillment formula involves and how you will benefit from living a more fulfilled life. You know, we're all chasing success. So many of us are chasing success in life. I believe that the true path to happiness is to chase fulfillment instead, because when you're fulfilled, you are already successful, but you also have developed the habits and skills to ensure that that success that you achieve in your life comes with happiness, comes with joy, a joy of life, a greater sense of aliveness, deeper connections with the people you love and those who love you. That you're pursuing things that give your life meaning and purpose, and that you are continuously growing. So again, I invite you to scan the QR code or go to my website. Just go to the very top and sign up to schedule a call with me. And I would love to meet you and tell you more about this program and invite you, tell you how you can participate in it. So until next week, when I'm going to ask my wonderful wife to join me again, Marcella will join me next week, and we're going to talk about this topic again on managing triggers, but from the perspective of couples. We're going to talk about how couples can support each other when they get triggered, and they can really, really support each other in their healing journey in ways that bring them closer together and deepen their connection, their relationship with each other. We're going to talk about how we have benefited from some of the practices that we have taken on ourselves, we've learned ourselves, that we'll share with you next week. We can't wait to do that. I can't wait to have her back on. She was a joy to have with me last week, and you'll see her next week when we talk about this subject as it relates to couples. So until next week, live courageously, love with all of your heart, and lead from the front. I'll see you next week.